Hello, welcome back. It's Crystal Living Sober. We have Ashley here today joining me on the podcast. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you.
Can you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, how old you are?
Oh, sure. Okay, so I live in Connecticut. I'm 34. I'm married. My husband is also sober, and we have a dog. Her name's Ruby. She's a Great Dane. I have a pretty big family, so my family just started really starting to have kids and stuff. So I'm an aunt. I've been sober for 2 years and 9 months.
2 years and 9 months. That's awesome. You're almost up with me.
Yeah, I know. Close.
Yeah. What is your drug of choice?
So I was an alcoholic for about 2.5 years, maybe. My parents got divorced when I was 10. I'm one of 5 kids, so I'm the oldest. My mom left. She didn't take any of us with her. And my dad had sole custody of all 5 of us and forever. She never got custody of us. She never tried. My dad was an alcoholic, which I didn't know about until I was an adult, when I was right before I was born. And he got sober because he got a DUI. It was the 80s, so it was different than now. They went to this weekend jail. It's hard to explain. And then he would work during the week, and then on the weekends go to this jail and do community service and different things. And I'm sure there was a program there. And then he got sober when I was born.
Because of his drinking?
Yeah, so he kept so he did drugs and alcohol together. So he did, I believe, a lot of coke and stuff like that. So he would he was doing that all through high school. And then when I came along, he was 26. So he was still, doing it. And then they got pregnant with me. And then I guess my uncle told me he just stopped when I was born.
Wow, and he's been sober ever since.
So his story is kind of weird. So he was sober for a long time. And then he randomly would have a beer now and then, which that part I'm not understanding. It was the past couple of years. So I don't know if he just had control over it and he would drink every now and then. If maybe it was just he was partying when he was a kid and maybe he wasn't a true alcoholic. His life wasn't, completely ruined. But so I don't really understand that, and I can't ask him, unfortunately. So I don't really know that part. And he never told me his story. My uncle did.
Okay.
So that part I don't know. So my mom has severe back issues. So when I was 16, I saw her have a seizure because she was withdrawing from her pain medication.
Oh my God.
So it was super traumatic. Didn't even know how to drive. Had to drive her 30 minutes to a hospital.
What age were you?
16.
16.
So I became instantly terrified of drugs and was no way, never doing it. And what she had was prescribed. She wasn't taking it irresponsibly or anything like that. She didn't have a pain medicine problem, but I was I never want to go through that. I physically I barely take medication. I don't even take ibuprofen unless I'm really in pain.
Right.
So drugs is just never a thing I did. I tried smoking once or twice, and I have severe anxiety, and it made my anxiety 300 times worse. Oh, and I was okay. I was nope, yeah. All set. And I was super young, teenager when I tried that. And then basically I didn't drink for a really long time. And then I got married. My ex-husband and I would have a drink every now and then, very controlled, not an issue. And then I never really went to therapy or did anything. I have a lot of childhood trauma. And then I got married, and then that childhood trauma kind of transplanted into my marriage, if that makes sense. And then basically we ended up getting divorced, and I ended up dating somebody really soon after we got separated. As soon as the two of us broke up, I spiraled out of control, completely out of control. And I mean, I had a really good job. I was manager of restaurants. I was responsible for so much stuff. And I think it was just so much going on at one time. And I just couldn't deal with it. And it started off slow and semi-responsible. And then within about a year I started getting DUIs. And then I would, I noticed myself just going down this path. And then I was a very social drinker. And then I started drinking by myself. And my drinking was never every day. So I maintained my job. So basically,
you were functioning.
I was functioning. Yeah. So I was like a binge drinker. So I would drink like 2 days a week, but I would just get really, really like blackout drunk when I would drink. So, and a lot of it was like social, and sometimes I could control it. And then it just got to this like unmanageable point. And then I started getting in a lot of trouble. I got one DUI in 2015. That was my first one. And that's before it got unmanageable. That was just, I made a dumb decision. And then after that, just like things started falling apart. And I never reinstated my license. So I drove illegally for like 4 years. And then I got my last DUI in January of 2019. And then I went to jail in April of that year. And then, so I had to do 4 months mandatory because I had so many DUIs like in a row. So they technically counted that I only had 2, which is why I didn't have to do longer. When I was going through court, I was in jail, not sentenced, for like 2.5 months because I had that first one, but technically I wasn't charged with it. And then then the second 2 were really close together, like 6 months. So, and like I had friends that kind of try, like one of my friends would like just say, oh, well, like, do you think you have a problem or whatever? And then sometimes I would be like, yeah, sometimes I'd be like, I don't know. And then just stupid stuff. Like, I mean, like my living situation was like all over the place. I was never homeless, thank God. And then I just burned a lot of bridges, and thankfully a lot of people, you know, are still in my life that really meant a lot to me. There's some people who I think I outgrew after I became sober. There's, you know, family members that I really had a lot of issues with that now I don't. But the basic reason for me getting sober is I was basically going to lose like my entire family. And I helped raise my brothers. And I couldn't imagine the thought of that. Like I just have a closer relationship because I was like so monumental in like so many things. So, and I had a nephew at the time who my sister-in-law wouldn't let me see him, wouldn't let me talk to him anymore. And they were just, you know, so things were getting really bad. So after I got the other DUI, like that's when I really realized like, I can't live like this. This is getting tiring. Like I'm going to end up killing myself. Like I definitely can't control myself. And so I went to jail. So I had time to prepare. Thankfully, I had a really good probation officer. And he, you know, gave me a lot of time. I was able to turn myself in. I had like months to figure out what I had to do. And then, you know, I told, you know, a couple people who I was like close to what was going on. And then I basically went to jail and only had communication with them. And when I was in jail, I just sat in my feelings and I was like, I need to know why I'm doing this to myself. Like what is going on? And that's when like, I just thought about all the trauma, you know, my mom leaving me feeling abandoned, me just never feeling fully loved by her. And then my dad, I feel like couldn't fully love 5 of us. Like it was just too much with him trying to work and then take care of us at the same time. It was like, I was like my brother's parent, and I was 10, you know, I lost my whole childhood. And, you know,
there's things grow up really fast.
Really, I had to learn how to cook. I had to like learn how to do so many things. My dad would barely let me go to my friends' houses because like no one would be there to watch my brothers. I remember like in the beginning when my mom left, DCF was called because I wasn't even old enough to be like left alone with other people. Yeah. So our neighbors would like call DCF. So then my dad had to get a babysitter for like a little while. And then when I got older, that stopped. And it was just like insane to put that on a child. Like I was a child, you know? So, and I don't have any resentment or anything anymore towards my dad, because I think that with what he was given, he did the best he could, and he could have been like, fuck this, I'm out. And he didn't do that. So I'm glad, and I'm a lot like him, and I have a lot of good attributes that he had. But it just, the both of them just, you know, messed us up. Like even my sister-in-laws, like when my brothers told them, you know, their story, my one sister-in-law, I couldn't fathom leaving my 1-year-old in a crib and walking out. Like I couldn't do that. I don't know how she did that, you know? So and that just messes you up in a whole different way. And it transforms into different relationships. I could not even have a healthy friendship because I didn't know how to care for people in the right way. Like, it was either not enough or too much. I had no balance. And then when I got in like men relationships, thankfully I didn't have any like really traumatic relationships with men, but I like always could tell if I needed more. So like I was with somebody, we were engaged, and I was just like, this isn't for me. And then I met my ex-husband, and he was like controlling, a narcissist. And then I always like made him fight. I mean, daily, like every day, that he wasn't going to leave and that he loved me enough, because I didn't get that when I was a kid. And I was so afraid that he was just going to leave me. And that ended up just causing such a traumatic, unhealthy relationship that it pushed him away and unfortunately into somebody else. So that spiraled out. And then when we broke up, it took me years to get over him. Like, because my thing was, I just pushed everything aside. I always just pushed it down, pushed it aside. Like, I'm not going to deal with it. I'll be fine. I'm strong. Like, I'm good. And then it just, like, I escaped through alcohol. I figured, okay, alcohol, I'm an overthinker. Like, I think all the time. I didn't think when I was drinking. I couldn't feel when I was drinking. And then it got to a point where my body got used to it enough. I would just like cry myself to sleep every night, because those feelings caught up to me when I was starting to sober up. So like I would get drunk, go home, and then it would be like horrible.
You know, feel all the feelings, because it was only temporary.
Everything. And it's like, why do you think people would constantly do this to themselves? And I thought to myself, like, why am I doing this to myself? But I could not, like, I needed that escape from everything that was going on. And, you know, I tried kind of dating, and because I never got over my ex, I just could never move on. And then I was like, you know, I'll just stay single. It's fine. And then I chose men who I knew wouldn't be able to commit to me. Like, knew 100% there was no way they would do that. And that's how I kind of protected myself, I think.
Yeah.
And then when I got, you know, all the DUIs and everything, and then I went to jail, I basically knew I had to change my life. And I knew that you have to be selfish to do that, because I needed to figure out how I was going to live my life without alcohol, when alcohol is everywhere. It's what I did as a job. Like, I had no experience. Now I'm a felon. I can't even get a normal job. That's the only job I could have gotten. So, you know, I got out and had to go back to it. And then I was very careful about who I talked to and when. I made sure I was ready.
Did you have a sort of spiritual awakening in jail? Was that your rock bottom? Was that like enough for you to be able to say, like, I'm done, that's it?
So a lot of people think jail did it for me, but I literally was in jail with women who had been in jail for 20 years, like on and off. And unfortunately, that doesn't make people get sober as much as people would be like, oh my God, I went to jail and I got scared and like, that's why I'm sober. I personally, truly don't believe that. And that's from my personal experience, because once you get out, it's like you forget all the stuff that happened to you when you're in there. Like a month or two after I got out, like I forgot. Like, I forgot how horrible it was, how I had no freedom, how, you know, I was behind a locked door all the time. Like, you forget those things. So I personally believe that, like, I just could not lose my siblings. It was that simple. And I wanted to be an aunt to those kids. Like, I wanted to be able to be that person for them. And I just think that was enough for me to know. And I was just, like, I wouldn't have a life if I kept doing that. I would have just been miserable forever, and I don't even know what would have happened. So my rock bottom was really realizing, like, for myself that I had to get sober, because I was going to lose the 4 people that I cared about the most. So family and connection. You didn't want to be alone. Yep. And then
that was enough for you to be like, I need to change for them.
As far as like a spiritual thing goes, so I'm Christian and I believe in God. And in the beginning, I prayed a lot and I really, really turned to that. And even when I came home, I was like watching the live feeds and I was really into praying and being like, I would say I was more doing like a gratitude prayer in the morning than like prayer to God itself. And my relationship with God is like a very easy one. It's not, you know, I don't feel pressured to go to church. I don't feel pressured to do something. So there's like a thin line where that lies. I feel like I'm very big into like, I meditate and things like that. So I believe there's something that's bigger than us 100%. You know, I do believe in God, but there's like this in between for me. So, so I wouldn't say I'm spiritual as far as like, well, I believe in God or I believe in this, I believe in that.
You believe
but
in
I
something,
believe in
though.
Something. Yeah.
And that's enough to help you in your recovery. Do you think you had a drinking problem at a young age? Like,
I didn't drink.
Didn't start until...
No. It didn't start until I was 26.
26. So you were kind of a late bloomer.
Yeah, it just, I didn't ever like it. And then when I was in the restaurant industry, and then after I got divorced, because my husband was super controlling, it's just like I had all this freedom. And I never got to be 21. Like I was married. You know, I had 4 stepkids. Like I couldn't do that. So it was like a mixture of, in the beginning, I think it was more me trying to like live that time, live that single life. And then it just transitioned into something that
like you were still trying to escape.
Yeah.
Because you knew how it made you feel. And you were like, all right, like I get to party and escape from my reality.
And I mean, I had a really stressful job and all of my jobs were stressful, and it just comes with the territory. You basically work all the time and you're never actually off. And it was just, and then I got into more serious, like, I guess roles. Like I opened a restaurant with the restaurant group, and that was crazy because I created just different menus and I created, different like drinks and stuff. But that's where like it turned for me, because like I had a lot of issues around that time, which was like 2016. So that's when like it was like this turning point for me. So I did that. I want to say that was actually 2018. And then
in a management position.
Yeah.
So you had a lot of responsibility.
Yeah. So from the time I got divorced until I got sober, like a little after I got sober, I ran restaurants. And I wouldn't get drunk at work. I wouldn't go to work drunk. But that happened like 3 times towards the end. And then I did like stop drinking, not like, okay, I'm going to get sober, but like, let me chill for a while. Kind of like, let me just have like some dry time.
Yeah. Do you think you were dependent on drinking at that point? It was still new to you?
No, it was pretty like deep into where I was going. It's before my second DUI. And then.
So you got the first one and you didn't think you had a problem at all? You were just like, oh no, a drunk mistake.
Yep. Because it's before I started drinking at home. It's before I was going out like all the time. I was at work. It was this restaurant job that I knew somebody from home or something. And they had said, oh, like this restaurant, they need you. And the guy that ran the restaurant was like a severe alcoholic. So he was, every night he was like, drinks, like blah, blah, blah. And he would like pay for it. I didn't have to pay for anything. And one night I had this girl serving me and she must have been like, I had 2 drinks and was like obliterated. So she was probably putting like crazy amounts of alcohol in it. And I drove home and I was literally like a mile from my house. Like it was insane.
Crashed and everything? Or
no, so I didn't crash. I got pulled over and then my roommate came to get me. And then, like, I don't know why I never reinstated my license. Like, I really think that may have done a lot of good for me at the time. But, like, I just never did. And I unfortunately had people that would just, like, let me drive cars. So it was horrible because those people were enabling me and not probably really even realizing that's what they were doing. But also, I think some of them cared more about me, that they just kind of just let it go and whatever. So, and that's a horrible thing. That's like, I don't regret anything because everything taught me something. I never hurt anyone. I never severely hurt myself, but that, like, I just wish I never did like any of that, just because I'm fighting to get my license back right now and it sucks. And I'm thankful I have such an amazing husband who really doesn't complain. Like, he just does whatever. And you know, and this could, like, I could have hurt somebody. I could have hurt myself. I could have, like, so many different things could have happened. So I'm grateful that never happened.
Yeah, for having 2 OUIs myself, like I totally can relate to that so much. And I remember, I think the second OUI I got, I was telling the cop like, well, it's not like I killed anybody. And I was like so shit-faced, and like I couldn't understand what damage that the damage I've done. There wasn't any damage, I didn't think, but there could have been. It's really tricky, drunk driving, and
yeah, super
getting in trouble for that. I'm still dealing with the same thing. I haven't even started to get my license back or any of that.
Yeah,
and now I'm in a different state, and I hear they have the option where I can opt out of the state that I got it in and still get my license in this state. It's just all so much, though. It's a hassle.
Yeah, Connecticut is horrible. It's like one of the hardest states.
It sounds worse.
So then basically what happened was I got sober in jail, and I wrote a lot of stuff down, and I did like a lot of inner work. So I tried to get into AA in jail, and it was full. Like 2 weeks before I left, they were like, oh, you can go now. And I was like, no, I'm good. I'll do this when I get out. And they do absolutely, you need to really rehabilitate yourself in jail. Like, they're not going to do anything for you. They're not going to sign you up for programs. They're not going to do a damn thing for you.
They don't do anything.
And I was stuck in like limbo for so long that they didn't even move me to the other side because it was so close to when I was going to be able to get released. So they just kept me where I was, and I had a job, and I didn't want to lose the job I had. So that's one thing that I would say got me through. I worked, so I was able to get out of my room. I worked in laundry, was able to do that. I wrote a lot. I wrote letters to some people. Like I wrote a letter to my dad. I wrote a letter to like the people I was talking to, but they would also like put money on my book so I could talk to them on the phone. And then I just knew, I knew I couldn't come out, but I also, and this sounds so strange, it's like the moment I recognized that like I needed to stop and why, I had zero cravings. Like I wasn't in jail craving alcohol. I didn't withdraw because I didn't drink every day. So I didn't really even have like a detox. I pretty much just...
But it was enough for you to sober up and then do a lot of self-analyzing.
Yeah, because you're there all the time.
Like,
you're by yourself.
Right.
Like, I wake up really early in the morning. So that's where that routine kind of started. I would wake up at 6 o'clock every day, and I would write and write down my thoughts, write down what I was thinking, talk to other people. And it's so funny because the people that people would ask me, they're like, what the hell are you doing here? Like, seriously, why are you here?
Yeah.
And when I would tell them, they would be like, I don't believe you. Like, there's no way. You don't look like you do that. I think that's why I could... People
say that to me before, but it's like...
Yeah. And I think that's why I got away with what I was doing for so long. I feel like any other court would have been like... If I was a different type of person, I just think there was a little bit of privilege there, unfortunately. And I had really good probation officers that, really let me slide on a lot of stuff, so I guess that wasn't really that great. So I got out of jail and I was paroled. So I was paroled back.
You were on, probation?
Yep. No, so I was paroled for a month. So I was technically doing my sentence, kind of confusing. You come out of jail for a certain amount of time. It was, for me, it was 28 days or something. And I had a parole officer who was supposed to come over and test me and make sure I wasn't doing anything. That never happened. He came once, told me he was coming. I tested. I was working full time. So I got out of jail and basically didn't contact anybody because I was like, I need to be ready to do this. So the only person I talked to was the person that dropped me off and my roommate, and that was it. And then eventually, I told my parents I was home and stuff like that, but they didn't talk to me or do anything like that. And my parents are just weird. And then
they're not supportive.
They're not supportive.
Even later on in life.
No, before my last DUI, I asked my dad if I could, he lived in Texas. I asked him if I could move there and do rehab. He said no. And then my mom didn't try to do anything. And then I really didn't have anybody that was trying to intervene or really cared enough to really show me that tough love. The only person I would say was one of my friend's moms. And she was like my mom because my mom is not a nurturing person. And it was nice to have her during that time because she was there for me a lot. And it was somebody I could talk to. And she never, whenever I was drunk and I would say things I didn't mean, she never really took it super personally. She knew that wasn't who I was. So basically,
that was the support that you didn't have,
from my parents.
You found it in her.
Yeah.
That's good.
And then, And then, like, I had friends who it took them a while to come around. I have a friend who I'm no longer friends with anymore just because I'm just in a completely different place. And I don't know if this makes sense, but once I saw myself in, like, where I'm like, okay, I have to put myself first because my sobriety is number one. Me being healthy is number one. Like, this is what I need to be healthy. And when I came out, I had, like, a very, very strict routine because I had to have that because I didn't know if I would think about alcohol. I didn't know what would happen. So I remember my roommate like had like wine coolers or something stupid, like Smirnoff something. And they were in his car and he's like, hey, is it okay if I bring them in the house? And I was like, yep, it's fine. I never like wanted to drink them. I never craved them. I was fine around it. And then I worked. So I worked in a restaurant, but just it's like a bartender server. So I was like, would be like making drinks, wouldn't bother me. And then I just continued to do my sober work, and then I went to AA, which I had to walk. I didn't drive, so I walked 45 minutes to this meeting.
Were you court mandated?
No.
To go to AA? Oh, okay.
No. And then I went, and I was like, all right, that's not really what I thought it was going to be, but that's cool. And then I went back again, and then they asked me to share my story, or like share or whatever. And I shared that, I was, 5.5 months sober and whatever. And one of my main things is I haven't had cravings. So I said that, and that's the first time I'd ever talked to really anybody openly about what happened. And this guy got up and he like just started saying a ton of stuff, and it made me feel so uncomfortable. I felt like so judged. I did not feel safe. And I was like, I just sat there and I was like, whatever. And then I went in like the other room.
Stuff about you?
Yeah, like he was just like, you're going to relapse. There's no way that you've been sober, like all this crazy stuff. So I was like, oh, okay. Like, there's no way you can do this without AA, all this other stuff. So I was like,
that's crazy. Like, no, you're not supposed to say that stuff in the halls, like in AA, NA, wherever. Like, nobody said anything to him.
The leader of the meeting, like nothing. So I'm about to leave, and this younger kid comes over because most of them were a lot older than me. Oh. And he was like, you know what? If whatever way you're staying sober, that's working for you, you're doing the right thing. Like, don't listen to these fucking people. So yeah, I laughed and was like, absurd. Yeah, I'm never fucking going back. And then that just put AA for me just in such a bad place. It gave me such a bad outlook on it. And I was just like, I'm just going to do this myself. So it took me like not really that long to figure out what to do. Now, back then in 2019, it's not like today where there were like all these freaking podcasts and there's like all this information. Right. Like, you have to fucking find this stuff. Like, you have to go digging for it. So I had a gift card to a bookstore, and I was like, oh, I've seen Russell Brand's book. Like, I want to go pick that up. And then I picked up a different book, and then about recovery as well. I picked up his book, and his book is the easiest way to go through the steps that I've ever seen in my life. And
it's Russell Brand's book?
Russell Brand. It's called Freedom from Our Addictions. And I did all the steps through that book in my own time. And like, a lot of people will read the whole book. I didn't do that. So I went through the steps as I was completing them and then moved through the book. So, because I figured I'm going to get like all messed up if I try to skip forward and do whatever. So when I do tell people to read the book, I do tell them, like, don't skip to the end. Like, don't do that. Okay. And so I journaled.
It's a book, and in each chapter is, like, each step for NA and AA. Mm-hmm.
And, like, in the beginning of the book, it'll say, like, AA, like, all their steps and the way they're worded. And then it will have him break down, like, what it means. Like, okay, step 1 means this. Okay, this is what step 2 means. And then you go through and can do it. And he explains it in a way that it's so easy to understand that you don't need a sponsor to go through this book. Like, you can do it by yourself. And I've always been really big into journaling. So I didn't even have an issue with it. So I basically was like, okay, I'm going to just do this my own way. And my family, one sister-in-law that at the time I didn't get along with, was so big on me getting a chip from AA. And I remember like telling my mom, I'm like, you could walk into an AA meeting sober. I could get this freaking chip, go home and get shit-faced, and no one's going to fucking know. So that chip doesn't mean anything. The way I change is what means something. And if you don't care about that, that's fine. I don't really care. And at the time I was like, I don't care what anybody thinks. This is my thing. I'm doing it my way. And if they want to be in my life, hey, you know what? That's great. And if they don't, that's too bad. And I had a conversation with my brother who's married to her, and like broke it down for him and was like, listen, like, this is what's up. Like, when I apologize for, you know, the certain things I felt like I did to him and needed to apologize for, and we had this conversation, I fully explained to him everything that I've been going through and all this other stuff. And eventually my family just saw it, and now I'm closer to my family than I've ever been. So
that's so good though.
So it's
now
so
they're in
it's
your life
just
and they support you.
Mm-hmm. Not my mom, but
well, yeah.
My dad passed away. But before he passed away, like, him and I were talking constantly. He would always tell me how proud he was. I had accepted him for who he was, like, and that's what unfortunately sometimes you have to do. And that's how I got through where I needed to do. And I personally chose to do, like, I was sober and didn't crave anything, so I didn't really need to do anything to work on that part. Like, I feel like I did my part by journaling and going to therapy and doing all of that. Then it got to the point where I was like, I need to work through my shit. And that's where I told my therapist, like, this is what I need to do. And this is what I need to work through. And I did emotional recovery, and it literally just changed everything.
When we do the emotional work, that leads us to recover so much easier. Because why are we addicts in the first place? Because of that trauma, because of that emotion that I don't think a lot of us deal with head on, then we're stuck in the addiction. But if we like attack the emotional stuff and trauma and all that, then, you know, like, recovering becomes so much easier. Then you don't have to rely on something else because you'll feel better. Yeah. And then you learn, like, through whatever therapist you have. I personally have a therapist who specializes in, like, meditation. So I meditate, and I I don't take medicine for my anxiety. That's what I do for it. And it works a lot of the time. But even my routine, like, I tell people, I'm not perfect. Like, I'll have my routine and I'll be doing good with it. And then I'll just fall back on it. Like, I'll get overwhelmed and I'll have too much going on. And I try to be, like, super open, because I'm on social media about it, super open about that, because I feel like people think that I'm just, like, this perfect sober human being. And it's not that way. And I was a horrible person. So it's never going to be perfection. Even if we were, let's say, normal people, you know what I mean? So there are going to be moments and times where we're going to be so overwhelmed with whatever it is, taking on too much, whatever it may be. How do you commit to staying sober? Like, you just don't have any cravings? Like, you don't, like, you say
I know it's confusing. I know it's confusing to understand. I don't know why I have no cravings. My husband's the same way. So I personally believe it's because I did the emotional work so soon. So I literally started working on, and I was very careful who I let in. I was very careful about what situations, and that was enough for me. I had one friend that was sober, so I would talk to him sometimes. And because I didn't do AA, I didn't really have, like, a super big support group, but I had a few people I could talk to. I just kind of, like, went through my own way. Like, I listened to Russell Brand's podcast while doing the book.
Therapy is so crucial, it sounds, because without therapy and meditation and
therapy helps a lot. Therapy helps a lot. And I'm still in therapy, I just don't go as often. And when I first started, it was crazy because I, like, would have my therapy session and literally wouldn't be able to talk to anybody until the next day, because it would take so much out of me. And then I had to process what was going on. And I physically, like, would turn my phone off, because I would take the day off. I would only do it on my day off. And then the next day I'd be good to go. But, like, I needed time to reflect on what was going on and to process. And it takes me a while to process stuff, because I have a very active mind. So it's like, I need to process that. So processing stuff is big for me, but I think I really started that in the beginning with, like, how I let people back in. That was a really, I think, crucial part of my recovery once I got home. Was I was really careful who I let in, how they affected me. So I did a lot of it kind of by myself. So
you set up boundaries that you needed to set that.
And then and that just continued. And eventually people respected them who really did care about me. It did take a while. Like, it wasn't immediate. Some people respected it and was like, yep, okay, I got you. But one of my sister-in-laws, she was telling my other sister-in-law, like, how I was doing and things like that. And I refused to talk to her and didn't want her to know anything about me. So I had to talk to my other sister-in-law and be like, hey, like, I know you're coming from a good place, but I need you to not tell her anything. Right now, she is not involved. I don't want her to be a part of my life, and this is my boundary, and I need you to respect that. And she was like, okay, I'm really sorry. Like, I didn't mean to do that. And that's a perfect example of somebody who, like, cares about you so much, and they're just like, okay, I'm going to respect that. And then there's people who literally can't. And unfortunately, I was friends with somebody for 20 years who I'm no longer friends with because she literally could not follow that. She couldn't. She couldn't. And I'm fine with the fact that it doesn't bother me. I don't feel like I want to have that friendship back. Like, I don't feel any of that. And unfortunately, in recovery, and I'm sure you can definitely relate, there are obviously people you did your drug with, like, you can't hang out with them. And then there's
for
people.
Me, like, I had to change my people, places, and things. All three.
Yep.
I moved to another state.
Yep.
You know? I didn't trust myself back home.
Yep. So you gotta like do those things. So for me, like, I moved right back to where I was. And I was just very aware, like, if I would go somewhere, like, I love to dance. So my friend and I, we went to, like, a place where we always went to dance. And I had, like, people spilling alcohol all over me. And I literally Ubered the fuck out of there.
You went sober?
Like, nope. I went sober, yeah.
Oh, my God.
And it was, like, I was like, what? I was like, I got to get out of here. I Ubered myself home. And then I was like, okay, I'm not doing that again. And then it took me, like, a really long time to, like, go to the casino. It took me a really long time. Going into restaurants had never been a problem for me. I know it is for a lot of people, but that's what I did as a job. So that was never difficult for me. I would never, ever go to a bar to see a band. That's something I would never do. I haven't even been to a concert since I've been sober. I would go to one depending who it was and just make sure I had seats, like, you know, not on the lawn or not, you know, in the pit or whatever. And then
it takes a while for us to adjust to any certain situation.
My husband and I, so Matt's a little bit more different when it comes to things. Like, he won't go in a liquor store. And I don't think it's just, he just doesn't feel the need to go in there. He just doesn't do that. I can go in a liquor store and I'm fine. So it just depends. Like, I get a little uncomfortable because it's just like so much stuff all around me. It's nothing major.
With time, it definitely changes your aspect and your perspective on, like, dealing with stuff like that. A year in, I probably wouldn't be comfortable doing any of that. A year in, I did get a restaurant job. I was making drinks and all that, and it didn't really affect me because I was in a good place and I had that support and recovery system, like, in place all around.
10 months sober, and I got a job at a liquor store, like, right before COVID hit.
Oh, so this was,
and I was recent. Like, fine, nothing happened.
I don't know, you're so much stronger than me. Like, I don't know if I would be able to, like, do it without a program or, like, any help.
It's kind of weird. And it's a big reason why the license thing was really big for me because I was having such a hard time and getting the runaround from DMV. So I decided to start to make my personal TikTok into a sober TikTok so that I could help people with those steps. And then, because, like, for me, like, I don't do anything anymore. And this guy was so rude to me on the phone. Like, well, how do I know you're sober?
Are you still in therapy?
Yeah.
Yeah. We all recover differently. Some people need to realize that.
For me, without therapy, I wouldn't have been able to work through any of my stuff and I probably would have relapsed. What I personally think.
What your thing is, right.
Yeah. And that's how I personally feel. And I may be in therapy for the rest of my life and that's fine with me. Like, I do it like once a month, maybe twice a month. It depends on what's going on. Because, I mean, I'm in a good place. Like, my husband and I have very good communication. I learned how to change myself in such a good way, but not, I believe even a bad quality is a good quality. And I know that's kind of confusing, but I believe that bad quality can be turned into something good. So I took basically everything about myself that I didn't like or that was unhealthy and I made it into a better quality. And I just worked through therapy on, like, getting over my ex-husband. I worked through therapy on, you know, being able to date people who weren't sober, because when I first started dating, I was dating people who weren't sober and it was really difficult for me. I'm so happy my husband's sober. I don't think I personally could be with somebody who wasn't sober. Yeah. I think it's just such a good system that we have. And it's like this non-judgmental, like, system we have. And it's great. And it's good that we have each other. We can help each other through things, but we also understand. And I think that's what connected us when we met. There was all the things you feel like where you're afraid somebody's going to judge you, or maybe they're not going to want to be with you because of X, Y, and Z. We never had that because we literally were both at such a place where we were like, we don't even care at this point. Like, all this shit happened to us and this is just what happened. And, like, it was just this comfortable vibe. Like, on our first date, which was 9 hours, we told each other our whole life story, like everything, you know, and it was comforting to be able to know that that was a situation that happened. It was comfortable to know that I could be so honest with somebody and he was going to accept me for the way I am.
I can relate so much to that. It's the honesty part. It's the being vulnerable in sobriety together, and you don't have to hide anything from somebody else. You're not in a competition. You're not worrying about other people. If you go through similar things with that other person, then they're gonna come to an understanding level. I just get that so much. My fiance is in recovery too.
Yeah, it's just like such a great experience. And then it got to, it's funny because I didn't talk about my sobriety. I didn't talk about anything other than like on my anniversary, I would post something on social media. And then once this license stuff happened, I was already in therapy, attempting to work through being able to talk about it because I was going to start writing a book. My therapist is like, you have to be able to tell the people in your life that you're writing this, like, and why. I was in the middle of working on that, and then all this license stuff was happening, and I looked at my husband, and I was like, I can't hold it in anymore. Like, I have to be honest. And then I reached out to a person and did a podcast, and then that was so freeing, but also so, like, jumbled at the same time because I didn't know how to tell my story.
Yeah.
And then I was just kind of like saying things that didn't really have any meaning. And then there were other things I didn't say because I was scared. And now I just really don't care. So my husband and I ended up eloping. We weren't going to elope, but my dad passed away. So I decided that that's what I wanted. And I had a very good experience with my dad at my first wedding, and I didn't want to replace that. So that's why we ultimately decided to do that. And it was both our second marriage. So it's not like it was something crazy. So it's insane how people were like, oh, well, like, are you going to have alcohol at your wedding? And I'm like, no, we don't fucking drink. Like, why would I pay to have alcohol at a wedding when I don't drink? And I'm not, unfortunately, paying for that for somebody else. And I'm like, people want to bring nips and put them in their pocket. Like, I don't even know about that. Like, whatever. People are fine. People are going to do whatever they want to do. And multiple people asked me this question. It wasn't like just one or two people, like, kind of curious. It was so many people that asked me. And I'm just like, dude. And then my husband's family, it's kind of crazy because they're like the opposite of my parents. Like, they're super nurturing. My husband's mom is amazing, and his dad too. And it's just in his, like, my sister-in-laws are amazing, and his brothers are amazing. But I didn't, like, no one asked why I didn't drive. Like, the only people we really, like, Matt's mom would be like, she asked me point blank, like, why don't you drive? And I told her. And then with the other two, it's like I just needed time to feel comfortable and to feel safe. That's like a big thing with me. If I'm not comfortable and safe, like, I'm not going to do anything. Like, it's just, that's a boundary for me. I wouldn't say I like told. So his older brother, I didn't really tell because I had started my social media stuff. So, like, everyone found out what was going on. And Matt and I are both sober. So we talk about being sober. So I'm sure they put two and two together. For my other sister-in-law, she knew I was sober, knew I didn't drive, but didn't really know why. And then, like, a couple months ago, I just told her, I was like, look, I went to jail. This is what happened. Like, I can't drive. I'm, fighting to get my license back. And they like pick me up and bring me places if my husband's, like, not available or not around. So it's super understanding, and they're really understanding. And even when I, like, first came into the picture, like, so much of my stuff, because I was arrested, is on the internet. Like, anybody can look it up. Like, my husband actually was, like, really honest. Was like, I looked you up after our first date. And I was like, this is not even the same human being. And this is crazy, but she'll tell me about it eventually. And so to have just these people who are, like, with my sister.
Did you have the mugshot and everything online too? Did they take one of you? Or
I know
it was just a write-up.
The only thing I found, my own self, so I don't know really what's out there. I haven't really looked, I guess, enough. But the only thing I found was there was this really horrible article written about me because my second DUI was also an accident. So there was, like, a horrible article that was, like, totally fake. Like, none of what's in that article is even actual information. So it was just so crazy. And I remember telling Matt, like, there's an article and, like, literally none of it's true. So and now with me being, like, so open and honest about everything, it's just, I don't really... I've grown, like, such a thick skin because, like, when I first started going, on TikTok, it was just like, people would say, like, you shouldn't be able to drive, like, you're a horrible human being, like, and I, like, literally now just don't even care. Like, in the beginning, I was like, oh, that's great. And then now I'm just kind of like, I don't even care. I just block them and move along with my day. Like, I don't really, care as much. And you know, my thing is I just want to help as many people as possible. And I wish that when I was in my addiction, there was somebody that would have helped me. Because I feel like my story would have been so much different if there was somebody that was like, I really want to help you, and like, this is what I want to do. Or if there was like a podcast I could listen to. Yeah. I didn't even know what a podcast was until I found Russell Brand's when I was already sober. And I was just like, oh my God, this is awesome. Like, it took me so long to realize. And now I'm so happy that there's more resources, and I want to help facilitate those resources if I can, you know?
That's awesome. And you have a podcast as well.
Yep. Sober Girl Podcast.
Tell the listeners a little more about that.
So my podcast is a little different. It's not all about sobriety. I talk about a lot of different stuff. I talk about anxiety. I talk about everything. I talk about triggers. I talk about healing. I talk about narcissistic relationships because I was in one. So my podcast, unfortunately, it does have like that sober along with it, but it's about so many different things. I've interviewed some amazing people in recovery. Like, their stories are so different, but so life-changing. And even in my point of recovery, I get something from every episode I do with them, because it shows me something I didn't do or something I didn't look at in that particular way. So it's pretty cool. I love it. I do it because I enjoy it. If I can help one person, that's enough for me. Agreed.
That's awesome. And you said you're writing a book.
I am writing a book. I was going back and forth between like a blog and a book, and I just want to write a book. So I'm just going to write a book about things I've gone through, how I healed, my sobriety. It's going to be more about how I healed than my sobriety. It's so funny how it's changed since I first had the idea. In the beginning, I was like, all right, I'm going to blame my ex-husband for everything and write my sober story. And now it's like, okay, but so half of that was my fault. Yeah. And then, so now it's like, I want to write about my sobriety, but I want to write about the fact that it's like 1% of what I've done is staying sober. Like, that's 1%, because all the other things I've done have healed me to a point where I don't need to escape anything anymore.
That's awesome. That's amazing. And you're in a good place.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
For coming on my podcast and sharing your story. I know it's not easy all the time, but yeah.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. You're welcome.